Welcome back, everyone, to the final week of Countdown Cup qualifiers. ZP here with Jake. And Jake, we're going to get right into it. It's the Fuel taking on the Fusion. And this is a matchup that almost in a way is must-win for the Fuels. They try and even things out in the standings. And for the Fusion, it's a matchup where they just want to continue to win, put themselves at the very top.
Yeah, at this point, they're taking victory laps, all but assured that they're going to be, one of the top seeds going in, of course, to that postseason. But I think the question for the Fusion now is less about being a high seed. It's more about, are you the one seed? That's the sort of standard they're working with now, which sort of underscores, I think, what an underdog matchup this is for the Dallas Fuel. They're really going to need to kick it to high gear this game.
And you take a look at the Dallas starting six. I mean, this is the starting six we've been seeing a lot from Dallas as of late. It's minus Decay plus Onigod. Onigod, though, been having some pretty good appearances as of late. The question is it going to be enough to topple the Fusion?
Yeah, that definitely is on everyone's mind here with Decay out of the roster. A player who looked like a real saving grace for the Fuel at the start of the season. Now Onigod taking over. To be fair, he had a little bit of a rough debut game, but I think after getting those nerves out, just playing in the high stakes matches, he's delivered more consistent performances since that moment. So I think his Ashe play has been top tier as well. So it's not, I think, a total loss for the Dallas Fuel. I think they can still pull this out. They just need to play really well as a team.
And they're going to have to do that against an incredibly stacked starting six here for the Fusion, where, the Fusion, they like playing around their DPS starters, where it's going to be Ivy and Hisu here on control, but they're also bringing in Funny Astro from the very beginning. No secret weapon memes here. No, he's here from the start, and this is still a scary Fusion starting lineup.
Definitely, they've been a bit unpredictable as far as what roster they come in, but what has been predictable is that they're always strong. And I honestly think this might be an instance of Philadelphia's confidence, bringing in Ivy and Hisu over the likely, first string EQO and Carpe, at least based off their great performance, in that summer showdown. So I think for Ivy and Hisu, though, these aren't weak players, right? These aren't players who are going to roll over for nothing. They are still really skilled. So especially Hisu in the hit scan. Ivy, mostly we saw him on the May previously, but I'm interested to see what flex DPS he comes out on today.
Well, with us going to Ilios as the first map, where if it was Nepal, you'd go, oh, this makes all the sense in the world, right? You play the Mayan village because of course you would. Now we're hanging to Ilios. Do you still think we'll see the May on at least one of these stages?
Honestly, I'm kind of hoping so, just because Ivy, I think, is one of the best Mays in the entire Overwatch League right now. However, I think it's very possible that they could just play the stock meta, right? Put Ivy on the Genji. He is a flex DPS player, regardless of his specialization. He's a strong Genji for sure. I think pretty much every strong flex DPS player has at least some comfort playing Genji. They've experienced the hero to some extent. So I'm excited to see what we see from Ivy. I think there's a lot of variability here. He could bring out a lot of different heroes. For Hisu, I want us to see the Ashe. I mean, I think that's been his best hero. I think the Ashe and the McCree in particular, he looks really, really confident on, very aggressive. That's what I like to see out of the Fusion. And then for the support line, I'm guessing this means Alarm is going to go back to the Batiste. And I think that carry support role, as opposed to the main support role, is a little bit more fitting for a player like Alarm.
Now, thinking back to the Dallas side of the equation here, where you're the Fuel, you're trying to right the ship right now. You've had a very up and down season. You're one game short of being exactly 500, so very middle of the pack. You're a player in the Fuel right now, and you're up against a team like the Fusion that just doesn't seem to lose. What's going through your head?
I think what should be going through their head is, basically none of that. Like, don't worry about the Philadelphia Fusion being a strong team. Don't psych yourself out. For the Fuel, they need to focus on their own game, play to their own strengths, and just take it one fight at a time, right? They do have the fundamental strength as players. I think this is time for Guangzhou and Note to really step up. I think they've been a mid-table tank duo this season, had some good moments. Note, though, in particular, I think he's really improved on the Sigma from the start of the season. That's been a noticeable change for the team. So if they can rally around a really strong tank gameplay here, I think they can make this work. Crimzo's had a breakout season, and Paintbrush as well, and the break has looked really consistent. So I think this is definitely anybody's game, but Philly Fusion, very interesting right now. I wonder if they're going to commit to this. They might actually play a lack of double shield here. This would be pretty surprising, and honestly, I think this sets up Fuel really well if Philly actually roll out with this.
Yeah, I mean, this is something where, in theory, they could make it work, but it's difficult. We know that most teams are still favoring double shield right now. Certainly the Fuel are, but you take a look at the Fusion, they're out on the gates, and it is going to be the Winston Zarya, so this is interesting for the Fusion.
The mid-fight here is actually incredibly critical right now. You can't say enough about it. The mid-fight has to go the way of the Philly Fusion. If Dallas get control of mid, the Philly Fusion, they're going to be in a really rough time retaking. But if they can win mid, I think it's a very different story.
The Fuel, they're just going to be looking to set up and make the Fusion head to them. The power of double shield is that you get to hold your position. The Fusion. It's going to be up to them to make a move. An alarm picked off. Note was able to find him. And the Fuel now up 6-5 here, and this is the perfect situation for Double Shield. They don't have to do anything crazy in the Fusion. They don't have the power to push in anymore.
Yeah, it's a nice, very fast rotation by the Fuel. They took the fight to the dive team, did not give them any moments to set up the dive, find the perfect initiation. They just hunt down Alarm, and, with no Lucio, that Orisa halt, eventually it's going to be coming for you. You can't out-rotate this team forever. You're just going to get halted time and time again. So now that the Fuel have control of mid, I'm a bit worried for the Philadelphia Fusion. One bright spot is that Fury got somehow a ton of ultimate charge that fight. It's really impressive by Fury on the Zarya. But I think retaking, look at Guangzhou's position. He's so annoying to evict from this spot.
Ivy having real trouble pressuring early on, and the Fusion seem to be poking in from different ends, but the neutral game for the Fuel so far, very strong. Able to fight poke for poke, but Doha in a bit of danger. Extended a bit to build up Blade, now has it. Sato just getting pummeled. This is the pain of playing Winston versus Double Shield. Doha coming onto the Blade, notes down. It's time to equalize. Doha on the way in, takes out Alarm, needs way more than that. The Fusion just won the front line before the Blade came out.
Yeah, the Nano Boost just did a little bit too much there, and Fury, man, he's just out of control on the Zarya. And, what looked like a great opening to the fight there for the Dallas Fuel, it all really falls apart off the back of beautiful aggression on Fury. I think that's, 4 or 5 kills this fight. I mean, the power of the Zarya is pretty impressive. If, she can go unchecked, if she can really pop off, then she can be that deadly force. And with Graviton Surge now on the table, this is going to be tough. I think the rally might be enough to help you survive, but when Ivy is going to be cleaving with the Blade, it just won't last that long for the Dallas Fuel.
There's just a crazy economy advantage right now for the Fusion, where say what you will about Double Shield versus this sort of setup. The Fuel are basically going to have to lose at least one fight, if not two, to equalize, and that's bad given they only got 44%. Fusion waiting to go in. They set this one up with the EMP, strikes 4, and the cleanup is easy. I don't even know if they need the Blade, but man, does it make it clean.
Yeah, pretty impressive by the Philly Fusion, playing this aggressive, non-traditional style, I would say. I honestly want Fuel to get off this Ashe, though. I kind of feel like that's a big thorn in their side right now. I don't agree with Oniga's decision to keep the hero because, yes, he has Bob now, but you're playing against not only Ana, a traditional counter to Bob, but also you've got Sombra. So you've got 2 ways to just completely nullify the ultimate. I don't like Oniga's decision to stay on a hero that is, frankly, incredibly vulnerable to being dove on.
Yeah, and I mean, for the Fusion, they're only about a fight, the 2 fights away, depending on how quick Fuel wants to play it. Fuel, they're going to be playing it pretty quick. They're going after Fury with a vengeance. Fury under all sorts of pressure right now. Able to shake it to a degree, still has Graviton in reserve. And the Fuel looking for a way in as the Fusion just bent back a bit here, Jake.
Yeah, I like the discipline from Fury, holding on to this grab, but at this point it might be a reset. He is going to commit the grab now, but Immortality Field keeping everybody up. No one even really dropping low on the side of the Fuel, and the composition has really hit its stride. That beautiful opening hack by Doha onto Fury. Yes, the Nano did keep Fury alive, but he just wasn't able to play the aggressive style he wanted to play, just always on the back foot there. So Dallas did a nice job with that hack, getting a foothold on the map, and now it's just cleanup for them. Although some late picks here, especially onto Guangzhou, he's going to be very late to the next fight. A player like Sato back with the Primal, he's going to be much quicker. So Doha with his EMP, Note with the Gravitic Flux, they should, I think, try to be aggressive on the side of the Fuel, because if they don't, then I think Guangzhou just won't be in this fight.
Well, the other thing, too, I don't even know if they realize there's an EMP here. Doha built this EMP up incredibly quickly, so Fusion might go in going, surely he doesn't have EMP, and then be surprised. This is the Doha special. He's done on Sombra for years now. And let's see what he does this time. Doha waiting for the EMP opportunity. Crimzo's already down, so this is already a difficult fight, but you gotta drop the EMP. 3 down already, and the Fuel just way too long to initiate there, Jake, and it just bites him.
Yeah, and Ivy just going massive here with the Dragon Blade. The dive comp has completely worked out here for the Philadelphia Fusion. A very non-traditional style, but through great execution. And I want to highlight Fury for sure. Just absolutely going off on that Zarya. Even in that fight that felt so awkward, he had the patience, I think, to wait a very long time with the grab, which even though it doesn't win them the fight, it did delay Fuel capping. So Philly was in that 99% scenario. All they had to do was retake. And then from there, yes, Doha had an EMP, but it wasn't very high impact. Fusion did a great job initiating with Winston in a way that Doha doesn't just want to solo EMP a Winston, but at the same time, he waits so long to get the EMP off that, by that time, Sato was already going crazy with the Primal in the back line. And, that was a great way to sort of sneak a win out, I would say, on Well, a map where, I think there's more potential for dive on that map. Lots of, unconventional angles to approach from. But here, it's back to the double shield.
Yeah, I wonder if part of that, too, had to do with the fact that the Fuel were probably screaming against Double Shield all week long, right? And I just wonder if they didn't expect the swiftness of initiation coming in from the Fusion, even though it wasn't a double shield comp in turn.
Yeah, and now I think Fuel are over-preparing here. They're going for a full response, like an anti-dive variant here, the Orisa comp, but I think they're going to be heavily punished because this McCree is just not really going to do much to suppress Hisu. However, I like Fuel getting aggressive with this comp. They need to be aggressive. They won't outlast in the damage trade against Sigma, but maybe they can get aggressive, find some opening picks.
Well, the other reason to get aggressive, don't give Widow time. The problem is Onigod bites it early on, was going around the side. Ivy caught him. And now the Fusion up 6 on 5, and the Fuel, they just, with the Sombra as the only remaining DPS, they don't really have the power to fight back against this. They're just going to get mowed down one after another, and the Fusion are looking incredibly strong as they head over to the point.
Yeah, the Fuel do get the cap, and they're going to try and build up some point time here. Ivy just trying to escape with his life, but overall, this 15% that the Fuel are going to have, it's not really that significant. So for Philly to have mid control, I think they're very happy with this. And now you're in this awkward spot where Crimson almost has nano boost, but it's really not a great ultimate in this situation. Very easy to get peeled away. You know, heroes like Brig and Sigma can just sort of keep whatever hero gets nanoed off them. Onigod switching over the Widow, but this feels like too little too late here. Hisu almost has an Infrasight. Onigod has about one chance, I think, to get an opening pick, and then the walls is going to come down. And just like a ton of bricks, how do you push into this ultimate?
I think you answered it yourself a little bit earlier there. You need Onigod to find an early pickoff. The Fuel just need an injection of life here. The problem is, Hisu opening up with the Infrasight, it's going to delay just how aggressive Onigod can be. And the Fusion can slow play in the back, force Dallas to make the first move, and Onigod gets picked off by Hisu. 2 already down before the blade comes out. This is just gratuitous by Ivy at the very end, and things are not looking good for the Fuel right now.
Yeah, I think Fuel kind of beat themselves on this map, frankly, ZP. I mean, it's not over yet, but they're in such a dire position. Just because Philly won that first map off this wacky dive style, Fuel thought that, oh, this alternate roster is just going to stick to that style. But, of course, they don't. They just switch over to the double shield. They can play the basic meta, too. And Fuel, yes, they're on the right comp now, but they're so far behind in the ultimate tempo game. You know, Note's not even close to a Gravitic Flux. So Doha might have Blade, but Fury could just counter that with a well-placed Gravitic Flux.
Again, I think if you're the Fuel, you look to Onigod and you just hope, you pray that they get an early pickoff. Anything to start things off, but Fury opens up with the Flux. Doha's Blade still moves forward, picks off Alarm. Doha ends up with 2 somehow. The question is if that's going to be enough. It was great play by Doha to break that much open, but the Fusion are still not removed from the point.
Yeah, and Hisu striking back. So does Ivy. Oh no, this looks like it might be all over for the Fuel. They need to clutch it out somehow. Supercharger from Guangzhou. They're all in on this fight. It's the right decision. But Alarm, he's almost back on the healer, and Funny Astro is being kept alive. Hisu with another, and I mean, this is just Philadelphia Fusion taking map 1 here.
Yeah, the Fusion coming well prepared, psyching out the Fuel to a degree on map 2 based on their map or round 1 strategy, and this was dominance from the Fusion, and it almost felt like they won a game of chess at the end there, Jake.
Yeah, this is definitely a strategic outplay here. I like the idea from the Fuel because that comp that they're playing, you know, with the Diva, McCree, Sombra, Ana, that's exactly the comp I would want to see them play like the last round, facing off against the Dive. I think that's a very great comp. However, when Philly just roll out on the standard, like the expected comp, that is, you know, the trick, I guess, because with Hisu uncontested on Widow, on Ruins, I mean, that's one of those... Ruins is just one of those maps where you just cannot deal with a Widow. It's not possible. You need to duel her. Unless you're going to go in for like 6 hero all-in dive strat. An uncontested Widow just goes crazy. And I want to praise Philadelphia Fusion for understanding that matchup so quickly. Like, as soon as they see something like a Diva, a McCree, they know that Fuel is forced to be aggressive. So Philly, they didn't even go to the point at the start of mid, and that's incredibly valuable for them. It lets a hero like Sigma have a long fight. So Fuel tried to make that rush work, but you know, Philly were just positioned too well around that. So overall, great play from the Fusion.
And to add a little bit of illumination to that, too, where some people might look at that round and go, wait, Jake, what are you talking about? Hisu, I didn't see him get tons and tons of pickoffs there. What do you mean it was hard to counter? You see it all in the positioning of the Fuel, right? Where the Fuel, just by virtue of being up against a Widow, they were constrained in how they could move. They were constrained in how they had to engage. So even when a Widow isn't having the flashiest moments in the kill feed, it's still enough to control the game and really limit the options of the other team.
Yeah, I mean, he just did his job, right? He charged up that Infra Sight, and then, you know, the first fight, I loved how long he waited with the Infra Sight. That's textbook great Widow play. I see some Widows popping that ult very, very early, but the ideal moment is actually not while the enemy's setting up, but rather as late as possible before they push, because once they're almost in that state of being committed, they're you know, going to fight, they're close enough to you that they sort of have to. That's when the Infra Sight comes in, and it gives you this huge advantage during the fight itself. He's able to pick off Oni God, and you know, he doesn't need to get a ton of picks, right? Shutting down the enemy Widow, she's not charging up her ultimate anymore, and as you said, then as the Fuel, you're just forced into this headlong aggression, and the rest of your team understands that. You know, they know, okay, there's no pressure on us anymore. We can back up as far as we need to back up. Fury played that really well, in particular on his signal position.
So we're moving on to Watchpoint Gibraltar for our second map. And we have Ivy still in the lineup from looks of it. I haven't heard anything about substitution, so I think Ivy is still in. Now, Ivy, of course, you think back to the beginning of the season, it was a lot of May. Ivy now in the lineup for the first time in a while. And what do you think about Ivy's gameplay there?
Did a great job in the Genji. I mean, I didn't expect him to play too much Mei right now just because the hero is a little bit out of the meta. Genji is a stronger pick, but the fact that he made Genji work so well on the dive strategy, you know, on the Orisa strategy, he had the versatility there. You know, not only the big blades, but also those early fight pickoffs. Think about the mid fight where he was the one to open things up onto Oni God's McCree, and you know that's so important from a Genji, having that sneakiness to assassinate an enemy McCree, a hero where that matchup can go either way, right? You can land a flashbang and it's an easy kill on Genji. However, you know, a Genji with a great approach like that of Ivy, you know, he was able to just cut down Oni God before he was able to really generate any value. So overall, really consistent plays from Ivy. Did his job there, focused on, you know, using his tank line enabling such as the Orisa Hall and the Sigma Flux to get great blades. And, you know, that was pretty impressive from him. And, you know, even Doha had a nice blade, but honestly, I think that was Alarm actually being a little too greedy with that Immortality field. He actually dropped it as he died. So the Immortality field didn't quite deploy to save Alarm himself. Which gave, you know, Doha a dash reset. So even that one good moment for the Fuel that, you know, almost got them a fight win, it still just wasn't enough. And it still was honestly more of like a mistake on the Fusion side than really the Fuel being in control there.
Now, I know there's people at home looking at all this going, why is Decay not playing? I didn't see Oni God do a whole lot in that last series. Where's Decay? And I think this is something where it's really important to note that based on the compositional matchups that we saw in Map 1, I don't necessarily think that Oni God was put into a great position to succeed there. I just think that the Fusion kind of out-game plan things from the very beginning. But now that we head into Watchpoint Gibraltar, I think it's a lot more likely that it ends up being more of a mirror. I mean, we'll see if that ends up being the case. But assuming it is, would you expect Oni God to bounce back a bit here?
Definitely. I think he did just get strategically outclassed there. It wasn't really like an actual duel going on there. You know, by the time Oni God was actually, you know, first he's playing Ashe into a full dive comp, which is a pretty rough spot to be. I would have rather seen him on McCree earlier that round. So he didn't really get any value. But honestly, though, you know, part of that is the strategy, but part of that is on Oni God. He needs to recognize that he shouldn't be playing Ashe in that scenario. He needs to play a hero like McCree against, you know, heroes like Sombra, right? You need to punish them with stuns. But now it's going to be a little bit more of a mirror match, but Oni God's got his work cut out for him. Sombra Genji dive is certainly going to be hunting for this Widow. Ooh. And, well, that's work right there from Oni God. Lighting it up, starting things off with a bang. That's how you need to play on Widow, though. Finding those early picks on DPS gives you the space to work with.
Well, and not only space, but also the ability to stay here in the frontal spot a little bit longer, where normally you're going to see the defense bend back a little bit as the offense moves forward, but you get the early pickoff, you know it's a 6-on-5, you can stay here for just a little bit longer. But now, I would expect the Fuel to start backing out a bit, Jake, as the Fusion bring this underneath the car wash.
Yeah, the really interesting hero in the Philadelphia Fusion's lineup, I think, is this Zarya. It could be hard to get value on Zarya in a dive mirror where, you know, it's not so easy to get guaranteed value off bubbles. It's a lot easier for the enemy dive team to just not give you energy. So Sato gets bubbled, but did Fury really get much off of that? I don't think so. And, you know, Oni God's still poking away from this backline. They need to get on the Widow. Eventually, he's going to produce kills.
Yeah, Oni God right now doing a great job of just continually repositioning. Oh, nice shot! Finds Hisu directly to the face. Gamsu, though, out of the fight, 5-on-5, so the Fuel not out of the fire here just yet.
Yeah, and this is where the Zarya can be really effective in this small room. Fury, that's his second kill. Both supports bio-naded by Crimzo, though. What a beautiful nade. That's almost certainly going to lock up this team fight. Unless Fury has something to say about it, he's still cooking him in here. And that's both supports falling now on the side of the Fuel. So Fury's dropping low, though. He shouldn't be able to live here. Note going to allow himself to fall. Not committing self-destruct.
I think Fury
but
did
it's
enough.
An all-in. Wow, they're committing.
That was Fury's dramatic sacrifice. Went in, just continued burning and burning to the very end, even getting the DMEC right before falling. Fury has been playing out of his mind, and even if the fuel come out here the stall, guess what? Fury's coming out of spawn. Graviton is ready, so you're gonna start seeing the fuel come in, try and bring this back. Doha has the blade, going to the back. Still a bit of danger here, thrown back. Doha's down, Fury's back to the fight, and the Graviton, it's ready to go, but you know, if you're the Fusion, you don't even want to use it here. You're just gonna drop the EMP and try and finish it out without.
Yeah, and I don't think Fury needs it. It's a beautiful cleanup. The blade just got shut down from Doha, and that's where the Zarya actually does get a ton of value. I think in the neutral trade it can be a struggle, although it was a nice work by Philly to get in that small room where Fury's more enabled. But then Doha, you know, that's a classic feels bad man on Genji where, you know, you're going for the blade on the supports, they're getting armor packed, you're getting booped, and then the guy you actually commit on the Ana just gets bubbled by Zarya. There's just no way to get a kill with that blade, especially since Crimzo didn't have the nano ready.
So the Fusion continue their relentless assault. Fury on the top right now, hang on to the grab. Astro and Alarm though again, hit by the Bionade, both getting low. Just barely able to survive, but while they're worrying about themselves, it gives the opportunity for Fury to get picked off. So the Fuel taking advantage of the support pressure as Doha gets to the back line. Has to be careful though, at 38 HP, doesn't want to get picked off.
Yeah, Funny Astro brawling to stay alive here. He is going to get cut down by Doha. These late picks, though, could be really valuable. I actually like that Ivy's committing like this, trying to trade some kills out as well with Sato. Sato's going to commit here. That's one kill. That's enough to go for, especially if he can find another Primal pin, and he does. And this is Sato's second Primal of the game. He's charging them a lot faster than his counterpart. He's just going to settle for top ship control now, but you know, this keeps the card moving. That was a hotly contested fight, and you've got another Nano Blade coming up, and no obvious counters for the sides of the Fuel.
This is going to be really tough for the Fuel as the Fusion just keep up with the style of relentless pressure. Even if they're down 2 players, they still continue to fight as if it's winnable. The Nano Blade's out. Here comes Ivy. Stunned, slept, thrown back. Ivy still somehow gets Doha, but a lot of that was mitigated. The Fuel, though, they've lost 2, and it still did enough, Jake.
That was the blade shut down as well. Doha tried to pull out the blade right as that last slash came out from Ivy. Oh, that is so painful. I think they wanted to get a Nano Blade there for the Fuel, but Crimzo, once his Genji fell, he had no choice but to give the Nano to Gom, so you just, you know, you actually want to commit the ult, try and stay on the same tempo. I like that Onigod got off the Widow, though. I mean, he had some good opening picks, but you have to remember that if Widow doesn't get those opening picks, she basically offers nothing. So the Sombra, although it's not as flashy, it's not getting those instant kills, it is setting up a lot, and oh, this could be another brutal one. An EMP on the high ground could catch both tanks. Looks like it's going to.
For it. EMP hits 3, and Gamsu nowhere to go. Can't even get angry after that. Now Sato falls in the other end, so it's still 5-on-5. Still something for the Fuel to deal with here. Note, very close to self-destruct, and really the trade just means the Fusion get a little bit more progress here, Jake.
Yeah, and a much later rally from Funny Astro means that his whole team is armored up. They have position here. Nano Blade is almost ready. However, he's going up against a Primal as well as a self-destruct. So there's a lot of potential to actually zone out this Blade. He is going to go for it, and this is great position.
Already takes down Crimzo. The self-destruct from Note is out, but Ivy able to just take cover on the other side of the box. That's going to be just one elimination, but it puts the Fusion in a great spot. Now Sato, his turn to move in, uses the Primal Rage. Heavy disruption onto the Fuel. Gamsu's trying to do the same, but just gets focused down in the back. The Fusion, completely dominant. Doha, Nano Blade, anything to try and push us back, but he's just getting dominated, Jake. Couldn't get anything done.
The positional game is absolutely beautiful right now from the Philly Fusion. They're keeping Fury alive. He's constantly pumping out damage, and you've got an EMP grab ready to close this out. Fury's just trying to finish up that ultimate, but this is all over for the Dallas Fuel. Defense, no way to get back to the cart, and Philly Cap with 2:20 remaining. That is a really blistering pace on Gibraltar, and you know, once again, I have to give this to Fury. I feel like he's the difference maker right now. I questioned the Zarya starting out. I wasn't sure, is he going to be able to get energy? Is he going to be able to have impact? It's a dive mirror, you know, the Diva so mobile, she can do a lot in that situation. Fury absolutely justified his existence here, and he is that final threat that, you know, despite running a Sombra, who is a hero that offers less damage, that I think has really enabled Fury to succeed. You know, hacks on tanks, and you've got Zarya there to finish them off. So the lineup from the Philly Fusion just seems better practiced, and they're just playing better. Onigod's Widow got picks. It just didn't matter.
And I think this is where you have to question, is this the power of hero pools, even in a week where the hero pool is out of it, where the 2 weeks of play prior to this, teams were playing a lot of Zarya. You couldn't run double shield because Orisa was gone, so we saw Zarya in play a lot more often. But now we've opened everything back up, and we're still in the era of Zaryas that are just completely bloodlusted. You know, Hanbin was one of the best examples where Hanbin was just looking insane, but now you have Fury in here on the Zarya continuing to put in immense amounts of work, even when you have a double shield option available. And I just wonder at some point here if teams like the Fusion looked at the situation and went, wait, yeah, we could still run double shield, but man, Fury's pretty good in Zarya. Let's just roll with this.
I think this is also, pretty heavily on the map. Gibraltar is one of the only maps in the pool where I think this comp is actually, like, the dive comps in general are dominant. I think it is an interesting choice to bring Zarya out here, but I think part of that is just the strategy of the Genji and the Sombra. You know, a Graviton Surge fits in perfectly with either of those DPS ults, and overall, I think it makes your backline a lot scarier. It gives more protection potential against something like a Nanoblade, where D.Va has the bomb, yes, but without ultimate, what does D.Va really do against that ultimate? So, the fact that Fury's able to bubble up Alarm or Funny Astro when the blade comes in, it really makes Doha's life hard, and he just hasn't gotten one good blade yet this map.
It's been tough for Doha, and as you mentioned, it's all the factors working against them. Onigod, though, finds Ivy again early on. Doesn't matter if it's attack or defense, somehow has Genji's number on the Widow. But that's going to give Fuel a lot more space as they set up for this all-important first attack here through the car wash.
Yeah, and already they've got something to work with now with that opening pick. Onigod pushing card as well. But so far, the positional game being played well by the Fuel. They're staying alive in the server rune, keeping positional control, although Fury wants to challenge for it now.
The Fuel looking for the finish. They take down Hisu off the sleep. And now, 6-on-5 for the Fuel. Everyone's looking pretty healthy. The Fusion in a real dangerous spot. And now you look to Fury, who, I mean, has been charged up, but with half your team down around you, I don't know if Fury can be the hero again here.
Yeah, Doha heard me, and he's pretty pissed off about that. It looks like he's about dominating the whole team now. Fury is going to die very late, so this looks like it's going to be a first cap for the Dallas Fuel. They've got Nanoblade to secure it, and Infrasight is, what better setup could you ask for in terms of setting up for the retake? Onigod in perfect position. It's going to be very hard to suppress this Widow. Well,
they use the rally, and the Graviton's going to be ready, but before the Grav's ready, Doha cuts down 2. So Fury's just going to have to hold on to it there. But, the interesting thing, I don't think they're going to win that in any case, but if Fury had the Grav a little bit earlier, it might have made the Fuel, take much longer to grab that. So the timing, very fortunate.
Yeah, definitely. Although I agree, though, with your earlier analysis that there's no way Philly win that. It's better to just save ults, get a good reset going. It is awkward because they did commit support ults trying to hold first. So Ivy has a blade to combo the grab, but he won't have a nano boost or a rally. So survival is not guaranteed for this Genji. Ivy's going to have to play this well, but what a beautiful opening pick by Hisu. And that really takes the wind out of the sails for the Dallas Fuel.
Well, also the Fuel, I mean, their healing just goes into the dumpster. You're down the Ana early. Fury drops the Graviton just to be sure, but the Fusion looking very good here, especially if Sato can just get out and get healed. You don't want to use Primal in a fight you've already essentially won, but okay. Ivy goes a little bit deep. Doha picks him off. That opens the door for the Fuel to get very aggressive here in just a moment.
Yeah, Fury offers a lot of stabilization potential here, but he's not able to really get aggressive, and Doha has a beautiful position from which to drop in. Fury, though, is going to be a tough fight for Genji. That deflect not working, and oh, there we go. What a beautiful counter dive EMP from Hisu.
Not just the EMP, but the Bionade on the Gamsu and the Focus Fire. Very good for the Fusion, but they're down Sato. Sato didn't get a chance to use Primal. Ivy very low on the brink. Only got able to finish him off. And the Fuel continuing to pressure in the same way that the Fusion did just a round ago. So the Fusion not quite out of the fire here just yet.
Yeah, the problem is Nanoblade is online here, so as long as Ivy and Alarm can, sync up and get together and use these ultimates, it's going to be quite difficult for Fuel to survive, especially if Crimzo is the target of the blade. Initial Nano, though, coming in first.
Nano out from Alarm, onto Ivy. One already sliced down. Ivy not yet sated, and with 2 out of the fight, the Fusion are in a very good spot. Sato, you notice that Sato's just been at like 20% HP forever? It's still living all the while.
Yeah, he does a great job making something out of nothing and just, not consuming too many resources. And that is what enables Fury to be so successful. Oh,
Okay,
I'm back. I resynced my feed and I'm back.
time left remaining, now down to 1:45. And they're going to need every last bit of that bank just to drain the Fusion here that really have all they need for the next 2, if not 3 fights.
I love how patient Fury's being with his grab. He's just going to try and grab Doha, it would be my guess. EMP does come down onto Doha, so he's not able to dash and act again. This is so painful. The Nano keeps Doha alive, but he's not really a threat here. Oh,
no, meanwhile, Ivy slices down Doha at the end, but the bomb from Note evens it up. The Fuel still being scrappy, 5 still around, but this is where Sato uses the Primal he's been saving for a while. More disruption, they catch Crypto in the chaos, and the Graviton from Fury adds more control. The Fusion continue to just hold the Fuel back, and now we're down to the final minute. It is absolutely the danger zone now for the Dallas Fuel.
I just love this dive style from Philly Fusion. They're really well practiced. They understand how to give ground, but hang on to those crucial skills, crucial ultimates that enable them to come back into the fights, enable them to clean up late. Like, for instance, that Nano Blade out of Ivy was a beautiful counter, especially when the EMP from Hisu shut down Doha. So now Fuel, they've got nothing except the Pulse Bomb, and you are playing against Fury on the Zarya, so it's really only likely you're going to get a kill if that Zarya bubble is down. And gosh, look at the pressure coming into Fuel. They just can't actually get full health. Philly are charging up ults very quickly.
Once again, they need Onigod to be the hero. Has the Pulse Bomb. Oh, gets hacked! Onigod falls! No crazy heroic Pulse Bomb this time. And heading into a 5-on-6 is the Dallas Fuel. This is so tough. Crimzo's hanging on to the Nano. I mean, maybe you throw in the Doha, hope he builds up a blade, but this is so tough. Final 10 seconds left remaining. Nano goes in onto Doha, who's in the back line.
Oh, no, they woke him up.
Ooh, Ivy and Sato over to the back. Here comes the blade. This is going to be the dagger to the heart. Not even really needed. The Fusion up 2-0.
Philly just, the ultimate economy was textbook there. I feel that the Zarya, while I don't think it's like the traditional pick on a map like Gibraltar, so much verticality that you would normally be relying on, you want a hero like D.Va, Philly absolutely made it work. The way they played around Fury and were able to give up ground, but keep those crucial positions, Alarm staying on the high ground, Funny Astro holding cart when it needs to happen, and Fury able to sort of rotate as he wishes. They did a beautiful job playing around Zarya. Hisu on the Sombra, just great EMPs, saving them to counter the dives from Fuel, so Fuel is always overcommitted when they do get EMP'd. Just overall outplays right now coming on from the Philly Fusion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd point to the neutral game here where it doesn't really matter. The Fusion just winning most of these fights before they even begin. But you know what? We want to break it down just a little bit more. Watch point is starting right now.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by HyperX. Unleash your style, unleash your fury with HyperX Fury Memory. And by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our game break presented by Pringles. Wavy, Zoe here, joined by Costa and Reinforce. And currently, the Philadelphia Fusion are up 2-0 against the Dallas Fuel. So let's talk about the matches at hand. Looking at map 1, Ilios. It was all Philly, although we saw a few moments from the Dallas Fuel there. I want to talk about the lineup here, Reinforce. We did see Hisu in on that Sombra. Ivy was playing the Genji from Philadelphia Fusion. What are your thoughts about the look they've shown us today?
Yeah, well, the lineup is a big talking point, of course, and Hisu playing the Sombra makes a lot of sense because there is a hero that Carpe isn't necessarily known for. We know that he has great hit scan, like Widowmaker, McCree, Tracer, whatever. But Hisu has a great Sombra, and he's showed that today in this composition. Ivy playing the Genji, we have some question marks about because EQO has been playing most of the Genji as of recent, but maybe it's a bit of a stylistic difference. We saw that Ivy had some decent blades, and he likes to play a bit more aggressive, whereas EQO perhaps plays a bit more passively or reluctant, so to speak. So maybe it's a bit of a stylistic matchup, but we saw them come out primarily on the Sombra and the Genji, and that's what they played on Gibraltar as well. So interesting style from Philly. Very happy to see this, but then of course they could play the double shield as well on Ilios to close things out. So very dominant and impressive performance so far by the Philadelphia Fusion.
I'm really curious to know if the reason they're running this lineup and this style of gameplay like we saw on map 2 is because of the maps that we're seeing. Ilios is a very hard map to play double shields because there's a lot of distance to cover, and then the same thing on Gibraltar, we see so much dive, and that's what we saw from the Philadelphia Fusion in that, and they just look so good on it. They keep playing the meta that we saw from last week with Fury on this Zarya, and it seems to be working really well, and they're forcing Dallas to play their game, which is what Philly is so good at. Dallas just don't really know how to get anything done. Onigod is having moments of glory with his headshots, and he is getting a lot of good kills, but outside of that, it's really hard. I think they're really struggling to enable Doha to get the value that Ivy is getting. Doha is getting, forward, but he seems to always die with every single blade that he's doing, and the Philadelphia Fusion are just so oppressive with their aggression and their teamwork that Dallas just look lost.
Right, and I think we have an example of just kind of the breakdown in execution for the Dallas Fuel in our crunch time presented by Pringles. Wavy, Reinforce, why don't you walk us through it?
Yeah, so we got an ending clip here for a round from Ilios, and it is going to be the Dallas Fuel hesitating a little bit, playing a bit cautiously, and that is going to mean that the Philadelphia Fusion can engage with their dive composition. So as we take a look at this clip, it is going to be Doha with the CMP that they really needs to get it going as soon as possible and find a way for Dallas Fuel to engage. But they don't, and instead the Fusion take it into their own hands, they pull off the Primal Rage, and then we see that Hisu comes out with the EMPs and his nice dive follow-up from the Fusion. So I like the aggression coming out from the Fusion, playing this composition, obviously very comfortable with it. And the Dallas Fuel, they're finding it difficult to really hold their ground against this team. I think that the Dallas Fuel are playing a pretty good game, but the Fusion here, they're really playing a top-tier Overwatch, and this is why they are a top team in the league.
So, Costa, would you agree this is just a outmatched kind of scenario?
Yeah, I just don't think Dallas was ready for this level of aggression. Like, that fight, Dallas had an obvious plan. They wanted to sit in this high ground and make the Philadelphia Fusion walk into them and then EMP, right? That's simple. But Sato gets so much value from diving deep into the backline that they don't want to solo EMP Sato, and then they get a little lost. They have a Gravitic Flux and a Rally, and they just can't get them off. They need to be more aggressive with their ultimates, otherwise Philly's just going to take the control into their hands, and Dallas is going to lose fights they really shouldn't lose.
Absolutely. Well, let's see if they can bring it back in the second half. We have an exciting kind of announcement, though. We do see some subs coming out for the Philadelphia Fusion. Hisu is out, Carpe in, Fury out, Poco is subbing in, and Funny Astra is out, and Boombox will fill his shoes. On the Fuel side of things, we see no changes, so let's see what an impact those subs will have on that second half. And for all the action, we once more headed over back to Zippy and Jake.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Pringles Wavy. Big crunch, big flavor.
That'll be the coalescence to kick it off from Alarm. There it is, Doha EMP. This one, very good. It doesn't interrupt Alarm's coalescence here.
이거는 EMP 그대로죠. 자,
Caught out. You can't wait to count for the burst damage of a pulse bomb. Sound barrier even being committed for the Dallas here. So Philly probably just take an L here.
It's been quick breaks so far today, but also a very quick series. The Fusion looking surgical against the Fuel. And the Fuel, right now, Jake, they have one path in front of them. Reverse sweep or loss, and doesn't seem to be a great start.
Yeah, certainly not after, that map 1 was really like just a strategic outplay, playing this unconventional dive comp first, then you go into the second round, Fuel try to counter that comp, but it doesn't even come out, and the Fusion surprised them with the standard strategy, right? So I think the Fuel are really tripping over themselves at that point. You go into map 2, so quick, and now the Zarya from Fury is just taking over, despite Gibraltar being, you would think one of the worst Zarya maps, right? It struggles to take high ground. It's just not the most effective hero in those situations. However, Fury made it work, and overall, I think the team playing that Sombra Genji style did a great job playing around him. We talked about Onigod in the pregame as well, had a really great performance on Widow, a ton of really impressive picks. It just didn't seem to count for anything. The Fusion, I think, did an absolutely beautiful job of working around being down a player, still maintaining Fury as like the centerpiece from their defense, and on the defensive round in particular, that was really impressive.
Now, the one thing that's worth noting is we do have not one, not two, but 3 substitutions coming in for the Fusion. Where we got Carpe finally back in, we got Poco, and we got Boombox. So 3 big swaps. That also means that Fury is out of the lineup, despite having an insane performance in the first 2 maps. And to the sub note, a fun little factoid is that you have to go back to week 16 to find the last time that Carpe did not start in a Fusion game. So the Fusion sort of playing with some things today.
I think they are, and honestly, there's no reason not to, right? Like, they should have so much confidence going into these matches, and, just sharpening up all the tools in the toolbox is a great look going into the Countdown Cup, going into playoffs, showing other teams that you have this vast arsenal, that you're unpredictable, and that's what I would call really the meat of this match today, is just being unpredictable. Fusion running a comp that I didn't expect to see at all on Ilios, and then, coming back to the standard in a surprising way. So I love the strategy from the Philadelphia Fusion coaching staff, on point right now. And now that you're bringing in Carpe, you're bringing in Poco and Boombox, so now you have more options as we go into King's Row, especially with Boombox Alarm. They could go back to the Break BAP style and just switch roles here, or we could see potentially a BAP Zen style come out. So, if you're the Fuel now, you're still guessing, still trying to think, okay, what are they going to play? But I think it's far from settled yet, and going into King's Row, I think the Fuel, it needs to be beyond pulling out individual outplays. This needs to be an overall team that is just better at adapting, and Philly so far have punished a lot of weaker teams that just haven't been able to adapt quickly enough.
Now, some people might be watching going, oh, Philly has just swapped up 3 players, they're going to a new map, is this because we're heading to King's Row, or do you think in this instance just Fusion doing essentially whatever they want? Because I look at this Fusion lineup, and I understand they have a good coaching staff, they have a lot of depth. I don't think they need to swap out 3 players necessarily for King's Row. I just think they're doing it almost that way just because.
Yeah, I think, there's a good reason, right? And that's that you have all these incredibly talented players. Why not give them stage time? They are actually capable of performing at the highest level. These aren't players who are really a step back, that your team's going to be a lot weaker. That's just not the case because of the roster that the Philly Fusion has. And that's what all the top teams are looking like these days. They've got deep rosters where you can go beyond that initial starting 6 and still have a top Overwatch League caliber roster. That's what's making them the very best teams in the world right now. So I think probably a lot of other teams right now waiting in the wings, having a bit of a struggle season, might look at this and gain some insight, because going into next season, I think this might be more of the meta to have a bigger roster of strong players. Don't expect some superstar starting 6 to just carry you forever. It's kind of an outdated strategy at this point. The top teams have all surpassed that.
Now, you think back to your time as a pro player, and you see how Fusion swaps things up as much as they do. As a pro player, is that something good that just allows you to specialize a little bit more, or something you would look forward to that sort of have that depth to be able to swap back and forth so freely?
Well, I think it's a good thing, but it's also something that you can't necessarily do if you're really struggling. Like, I think if you're struggling, it can make more sense to just stick with a consistent 6, try to build on that and improve, and just get your executions down. But for a team like the Fusion that's just dominating, that's having an amazing season, it's like the way to go even further beyond. Because if you just keep playing 6 players, during that whole season, and they have a great season, but then playoffs comes along and you've got to adapt the meta, you've got to play new heroes, and players who haven't started all season need to play, you might be in some hot water there. So the fact that you're just, at this point, like, the record doesn't even matter so much for the Fusion. They're going to be one of the higher seeds. So just prep yourself for playoffs, give yourself that versatility. And it's going to be relatively standard comps for both teams. Big difference here is Carpe on Widow versus Onigod on the Ashe.
All right, so the Fuel, last opportunity to turn things around here in the series. On the attack here in King's Row. Halt Rock already heading directly at him, and the Fuel could be taking this a little bit slower as Carpe finds Onigod to kick things off. And already the Fuel in a tougher spot.
Yeah, great work from Carpe, and that pickoff's probably going to lead to a snowball fight. Doha's fighting back as best as he can, charging a ton of ultimate, but now Carpe's just uncontested, and he finds more headshots. Oh, he even wants to duel with Onigod.
And the Fusion, I mean, this is all cleanup right now, Jake, where they get the early pickoffs courtesy of Carpe, and then they just roll into the Fuel. Now, they do lose Ivy towards the end. They'll make the Fusion perhaps a little bit less aggressive, but already they've burned about a minute off the clock.
Yeah, and Onigod switched to Widow. Now he's back to the Ashe, resets his ultimate. Bright spot for the Fuel is that Doha did a beautiful job charging up that blade incredibly quickly. So it's possible that Philly Fusion won't be entirely ready for this. But look at Poco, man. He almost has a flux after one fight. That's pretty disgusting as well.
He's got it now. The Ant Matrix for the Fusion early. Going to be forcing the Fuel back. So it's Ant Matrix v Ant Matrix, but neither side really wants to poke through the window. But as you say, the Flux advantage here is so sublime for the Fusion because Poco gets to use the Flux now, throws him into the air. Now let's see if Carpe finds anything right after. Still, everyone alive for the Fuel, so the Fuel able to deal with it, in part due to the Immortality field. But now Ivy has the blade, takes down 2, over the top and done. The Fuel pushed back again.
Wow, beautiful blade out from Ivy there. Gets the early burn on Sato's halt. Synergy is perfect. And then he has the patience to just wait for that final second dash slash combo to finish off Paintbrush. So the reset is really painful for the Fuel. Not much to work with in terms of ultimates. And Philly did expend everything, but they do have Supercharger. And if you only had one ultimate, you would pick Supercharger every time. It sort of enables you to get all those other ultimates back. Gamsu a little bit behind on that due to losing those fights. So quick Supercharger out from Sato. Fuel might be able to just kite this out, though, so potentially pretty low impact.
Gamsu's in danger. Gamsu's down!
No.
Oh, he was so low and just got caught before he could fully break line of sight. And it's another delay for a team that can't really afford more, Jake. 1:30 left in the series on the line.
Yeah, Doha is sneaking around in the back line, forced to dash even deeper behind. This could offer some distraction on Carpe, but Carpe doesn't care. He's just going to push into the front line and get a kill. So now Doha's going to get in, but yeah, beautiful work by Alarm. He's just staying with his buddy Carpe, and Carpe's a Widow. I mean, my God, we knew this guy is good, but he's just putting on a show here, really dominating Onigod.
Fuel, they use their Flux. They don't get much out of it. Just a little bit of positioning. Doha low down. Carpe finishes him off. Sato's out of the fight, so perhaps a brief moment, but Alarm was able to get around, find Paintbrush. The Fusion still up in numbers as the Fuel, they have to get on the point now. I mean, it's under a minute left. And Carpe's just doing whatever he wants. Finds Gamsu to the side. It's nothing flashy, but it's so effective.
Yeah, and next fight, you're going to be pushing into an Infrasight. This is one of the better defensive setup ults in the game. Just gives your team all the info. Gamsu's Supercharger is probably like the biggest win on the side of the Fuel, that they have that option available. But will Fuel even push into this? I think they might just need to wait it out, go for a single final fight. But, I mean, like, the setup is just very obvious here, right? It's very telegraphed because of the Infrasight. And, gosh, if Carpe finds this pick.
That'd be the end of it if he did, but there's the Flux. Ivy on the fall through right after, takes down Onigod. And now the burst threat for the Fuel, it's gone again. And we're in their final 10 seconds, so the Fuel must commit. 5 on 6. Is anything gonna go the Fuel's way? Ivy with the blade, dashes on through, takes down another 2. Carpe, the cherry on top. And this is gonna be a first point hold with authority from the Fusion.
Yeah, this one might be over, ZP. This one...
You don't say!
This one might be... Yeah, this is just a brutal domination here. What else can you say? Carpe coming in on the Widow, and he's just like, hey, I've been just playing Widow HSDM while we were playing those other matches. I'm feeling pretty warmed up. Just dominates the server. And... I mean, what can the Fuel do when Carpe has a performance like that and the rest of the Fusion is playing incredibly well? You know, Ivy's blades have been great, and I want to highlight Sato as a key enabling factor there. Every single time, Sato even puts his life on the line to get a great halt because he knows that's what really matters to enable Ivy to get the big cleave with blade so that, you know, even when the drone comes out, like, you're hitting 3 or 4 people with the blade. So, like, yes, you're alive for a second or two because of the drone, but you just chop the tank so low. Everyone from the Fusion gets aggressive. And honestly, I hope that they play double hit scan on attack here. I think that actually would be a great decision because then the first fight is going to be so hard for the Dallas Fuel. You just have so much outgoing DPS pressure. You don't have that flanker to attack a backline, but, I mean, maybe you don't actually need it if you just break shield really quick and Carpe just finds opening kills.
I mean, it's going to be hard no matter what, where the Fuel are in that terrible Overwatch position, right? You have to hold for 4 minutes, and all you get in return is a draw. You don't even get a win. So it's incredibly difficult. It's so rare to see, you know, the idea of a double first point hold. I mean, it has happened, but it is incredibly rare in the entirety of Overwatch competition. But we'll see if the Fuel have what it takes to at least keep the series alive.
Yeah, it's going to be the standard Genji comp coming out for the Fusion. Carpe's Widow, though, man, it's just like if he just gets a kill, this defense is basically over. So the Fuel, they have to be so cautious here, and that's a really rough feeling. You can see they're holding much more passively than the Fusion did. And Fusion doing a great job in the poke war, but Onigod, he will have an edge in the shield trade. Now he crosses that sideline quickly to get aggressive, but the Dynamite misses, and beautiful halt, dash through. It's an explosive fight, though. This could go either way.
Carpe, though, has the line of sight right now, just looking for one magic pickoff. Has it if he can find it. Not quite yet. Meanwhile, Onigod takes down Alarm, and the Fuel holds strong. Onigod having the time of his life on the other side.
Yeah, that amplification matrix combined with the dynamite just destroyed them. But, man, how close was that, right? If Carpe finds that first headshot, that's an uncharacteristic miss. And if Onigod hadn't been alive, he wouldn't have been able to dish out that damage. So this game is really on a knife's edge, right? One mistake and you lose King's Row.
So the Fuel, they survived the first fight, but they're going to need another 3 to 4 more in a row just to stay alive. Onigod in the back. The Bob charged up. Carpe in for sight out. The Fusion, they know exactly how to approach this. But now the Fuel, they use their flux. Onigod down in the back. Ivy was able to dash back with the blade. Sato at the finish. The Fusion, though, they lose 2 as they move back in. The Fuel still fairly healthy, pushing them back out of the point. The Fuel so far hanging on, Jake.
Yeah, I think losing Poco there was what really cost them, so a nice flux by Note. But now it's Poco with the flux advantage. Paintbrush has the rally. To be fair, there's a lot of ultimates on the side of the Fuel. They're doing a beautiful job here using the absolute minimum of ultimates, so Philly never get that overwhelming scenario. But now Carpe over to the Ash, wants to offer more in the shield trade. He hasn't been able to find the picks. I actually like this call, and that's a big flux, going to find everyone.
It's a nice flux. Is the fall through going to be there, though? Maybe not. Paintbrush.
Oh,
Doha's taken down. Carpe deletes Doha immediately. And now the Fusion have the advantage they've been looking for. 6 on 5. It's up to Onigod to respond, to keep the Fuel in this. And they take down Ivy. They even it back up. There's still hope for the Fuel.
Yeah, Amp Matrix does come out, though, from Boombox. He's going to be putting out a lot of damage downrange here. We'll see if the Fuel can actually answer that. They're going to be hiding in the corner, but another Supercharger keeping the pressure on. Doha's blade to answer.
The halt to set up. Doha with the blade right to the back. Looking for a little bit more. Boombox out of the fight. Oh, Carpe with the shutdown again. And with 3 down for the Fuel, this could be all she wrote.
Yeah,
Ivy, dash, it's over. The Fusion sweep the Fuel in a very dominant fashion. And what more can you say? Excellence continues in Philadelphia.
Yeah, just incredible work by them. What a full hold. You know, you even bring in some players cold who haven't really warmed up in the series. What do? They just lay the smack down with a full hold on King's Row. Offense was a little bit rocky, but just think back to that moment that Carpe had Onigod in his sights and, you know, missed when Onigod wasn't really watching that. And to be honest, that was like, you rarely see that from Carpe. That's a surprise when it happens. But if Carpe found that headshot, they might have even won that fight just because the Ash wouldn't have been able to wipe them in that way. So just not too much going for the Fuel right now. A little bit of an outmatch on a lot of levels there. I want to highlight, you know, players like Fury, especially in those first 2 maps, having a ridiculous performance on the Zarya.
Yeah, I mean, we saw talent across the board for the Fusion here. And, I mean, I think the hardest part here for Dallas is that there were points in the series where they were clearly out-strategized and they had compositional losses. They had points where when it was more even on composition, they just lost in the neutral. They were not poking anywhere near as effectively. But, you know, that's the Fuel in a nutshell right now. But you look towards the Fusion, you got to celebrate the good. And our player of the match, presented by Xfinity, it's Fury. Fury looked insane the first 2 maps.
Yeah, think about opening up with that map, you know, playing Winston Zarya despite Double Shield being back in the pool. It's pretty fearless from the Philadelphia Fusion. They managed to make it work even after mid-fight not going their way. So really impressive work by them. And mostly that was on the back of Fury, having great positioning, discipline on the bubbles, discipline on the grabs, knowing when to commit and when to play passive. And, you know, the commitments were pretty terrifying from him. Like, think about it, even on Gibraltar, those fights in the server room where Fury just gets 1, 2, 3, 4 kills. He's just staying alive forever, keeping that Brig and Ana alive as well. And with the perfectly timed bubbles on his Ana when the blade comes in. So just really doing everything on Zarya, you know, being that incredible damage threat, putting himself in harm's way in cases for his team, but also having the ally bubble to keep his friends alive, you know, keep them fighting, especially those supports. So pretty deserved player of the match by Fury there. But, you know, I would say the Fuel, they had some good moments there. They had a nice resurgence, almost got the counter full hold on King's Row, you know, brought the clock down by 3 minutes. But then once Carpe took the mirror match on Ash, just kind of fell apart from there. That beautiful pick onto Doha, pretty impressive.
And I think this match just kind of continues a storyline that we've really been seeing this month in particular, Jake, where there is a big divide between the top of the Overwatch League in North America and everyone else, where we have these teams like the Fusion, like the Eternal, like the Shock, that are just leagues above everyone else.
And for me, there have been some improvements, you know, from teams like the Fuel. I think Note had a nice job on Sigma there, you know, did some, had some good plays, had some big moments. But when it comes down to like the overall team play, the strategy, that's where Philly just had them beaten. Like that, you know, coming out on the unconventional comp first round and then back to the full standard, it makes the full standard strategy surprising in and of itself. So Fuel, you know, tripped themselves up with this counter dive Orisa style that just falls flat against Orisa Sigma. It just doesn't compete in the value game. So from Philly Fusion, they can pull out any look. They can pull out the unconventional stuff, you know, play that to a T, but also, you know, the basic strategies that everyone fields, they play them exceptionally well. And when you have that sort of versatility as a team, it's very hard to game plan against. So I don't want to like criticize the Fuel for those decisions. I think maybe they could have been quicker to go to McCree on the first round of Koth. Maybe they should have rolled out in the Sigma on second round, but it's so hard in match. You're trying to counter what you guess the enemy team's going to do, and when they're playing unpredictably, that's so difficult to do right. So props to the Fusion for just staying ahead of the curve here.
Well, that was our first match of the day. Coming up next, it's going to be the Valiant taking on the Outlaws, and it's heading at you in a flash.